talking specifically about my own journey. Again, I was coming from a background that is not so common for product managers. Basically, I was a biomedical researcher. What really helped me about, getting hands-on and being that person before becoming actually getting the job, for me, it was all about, okay, this is the theory. How can I come up with a way that I actually implement it? Hello, everyone. Super excited to be here. For some of you, basically, it's Saturday. So thanks for spending your Saturday with me. So this is Mariam Rezapour. I'm a product manager with Amazon AGI. I'd like to talk a little bit about generative AI in healthcare today, opportunities and challenges. A little bit about my background. I came to the US 2012 to get my graduate degree in biomedical engineering. Life at the time looked like being in the lab with pipette, PhD, data gathering, dealing with clinical trials. So never thought I find my way where I am today. But what changed my path at the time, I started taking online courses in machine learning. I remember 2013. Taking end-to-end machine learning. So I would go to work to operating rooms in the morning and taking online courses at night. It was so fascinating that I naturally started kind of connecting what I learned last night and kind of figuring out, okay, this is happening in the field in operating room. How can I take that learning and basically solve something for patients? So that kind of led to starting my first healthcare AI startup. And from there, my path opened to product management, and I'm now product manager at Amazon AGI. Just before we start, just a quick note, the views expressed are my own and not the views of my employer. So moving to the next. So setting the agenda. What we are going to cover today is basically, again, talking about connecting learnings to practice. It's always fascinating to me, taking all the advancement in research and theories and kind of finding the so what for it and applying it to practice. So hopefully today, I'm going to try to talk about the rising opportunities in healthcare using large language models. Regardless of which industry you're in or which LLM product you're focusing on, hopefully some of the learnings are going to be applicable for you as well. And the second point I'm trying to accomplish for some of us product managers at some point, or will kind of think about this question of whether, how, and when to specialize, especially in the basically ML product management. I'm going to give a glimpse of what it means to specialize as an ML product management in healthcare field. A spoiler alert, that's going to include reading a lot of scientific papers. You're going to see throughout my presentation, I've cited papers from Nature, Science, JAMA, which are the basically prominent scientific papers in healthcare. So it includes a lot of reading about research, especially with patient and clinical data. Last but not least, I'm going to shed some light on a startup landscape in healthcare AI. We know it's an interesting path for some of product managers to go into entrepreneurship. For those of you interested, maybe I can try to give you some starter point to see whether healthcare is for you or not. So what we will not cover, we will not go into technical details of large language models. Please go see community session number 33 on YouTube. It was a really good one. It's a recent one. And also we are not going to cover fundamentals of AI, generative AI product management. Again, another good session, number 32, that you can watch on YouTube to be able to understand those terms. But it's important to set the stage I'm going to quickly talk about this. Most of you already know these, but just making sure. I think no machine learning presentation becomes machine learning presentation without these circles. So we have machine learning, we have a deep learning subset of machine learning, and we have generative AI subset of deep learning. Machine learning has been around for since 1980, for ages. It's not new. Of course, the advent of the computing, more resources going into, and more brain going into this field, we are seeing more and more advancement in this field. Even large language models have been around for years now, but with ChatGPT, great example of finding product market fit. It basically marketed to individuals, everybody, regardless of background, they were able to understand the value of it and being able to use it. So that's why we saw more and more basically a spotlight on LLMs. So quickly, generative AI is about an artificial intelligence capable of generating either it's text, image, other data types. And most of them today are basically based on large language models and foundational models. LLMs are deep learning models that train on massive data sets. We will talk about what massive means, again, making sure we stay, it's subjective what it means massive. So we are going to touch on that to create the new combination of text that mimic natural language based on the training data. Foundational models, large machine learning models, pre-trained with the intention that they are going to be fine-tuned for specific tasks. So putting that aside, talking about massive, what that means, we have multiple LLMs, and we are seeing every week more and more coming to existence. As you see, parameters count is going into the T territory, trillions. But one thing to call out is, although we talk about size a lot when it comes to LLMs, size of the parameters, number of parameters is just one factor. A lot of other factors such as, training data or fine-tuning protocols or architecture impacts the performance of the models. For example, Llama, a very powerful one, only has 65 billion parameters. So with that in mind, let's go to healthcare. So I almost removed this slide, but there is one point that I want to, it's interesting, I want to talk about it. So before 1920, there weren't any health records, so not even papers. From 1920 to 1960, it was basically paper-based medical record. Electronic health record came into the spotlight 1960, and government stepped in 1970. At the time, it was hotly debated topic, super innovative. And by 2016, 96% of United States already had EHR. So it's the semi-saturated market today. It's not innovative. It's kind of like a duh. It's there. But it used to be innovative, and today EHRs are enabler of LLMs, which is innovation today. So what makes me thinking, what is that next thing post LLM and applications that LLMs and all the use cases are going to be just enablers? So some good question to sometimes think about. So a little bit deeper, just painting the overall picture of LLMs in healthcare. When we talk about healthcare, we usually can think about it in three separate, basically, fields of clinical application, research application, and educational application. This graph is from Nature. I cited a paper here. I highly recommend reading this paper if you're interested to dive deeper into, okay, what are the LLMs, the specific LLMs being used in which of these categories. But just summarizing, if we talk about limitations, which are super important in medicine, it's about lack of accuracy, recency, transparency, and ethical concerns. Again, we have these issues in many different fields, but imagine we are dealing with the lives of people. So stake is higher. Although these limitations, I'm expecting very soon seeing LLMs implemented in practice. Of course, in the beginning, it's going to start with tasks that are basically with the stakes being lower, not using personal data, or a specialist knowledge is not directly needed. So a lot of these are being basically dictated by policymakers. It's not just about the performance or performance of the models, but these limitations, for good reasons, we should guide us to put some guardrails where when developing LLMs in healthcare. Again, that's a good paper for those of you interested to dive deeper. Going into applications. So again, a lot of different use cases exist. A lot of research is being done on different fields. But the ones that I picked, I'm really fascinated, passionate about the clinical aspect of it. You know, as product managers, it's really important to have empathy for users. And it's just super easy to stay empathetic to individuals who are already sick, ongoing pain. So that is the field that I feel as a product manager, you can really see the impact of the work you're doing, and it's, at least for me, super motivative. So the use cases I picked are focused on basically clinical aspect of healthcare. The first one is basically virtual nurses or virtual assistants talking directly with end users, with individuals. This is super important. This is not a new concept, at least at the time that I was going through pitch decks and my startup. 1 out of 3 or 2 out of 3 was basically one of these. But suddenly we are seeing uptick of this specific use case. I'm going to talk about it later in the presentation, just because LLMs can directly impact and bring value to this specific use case. So today, just only in the US, developed country, 60 million adults are dealing with 2 or more chronic diseases, and our resources can only support 20%. So what happens to the remaining 80%? And imagine, and this is way bigger when it comes to developing countries. So one interesting research I cited here looked at 195 randomly drawn patient questions on the social media. Expert went in blinded to whether chatbot responded or physician responded, rated responses on 2 fronts of quality of rating, quality and empathy. And we see that, at least in this research, chatbot beat physician. So definitely there is an opportunity to explore there. The second use case I think is super important is predicting adverse events. I cited one paper here, researchers at Queen University used basically 700,000 structured radiology reports to successfully predicting cancer progression patterns. Again, why I cited the paper down there, in case you're interested to dive deeper. But another factor is that, imagine stakeholders in the field of healthcare. We have medical records, but there are some non-medical information that are super important that are not being leveraged, used today. For example, we have a stakeholders such as speech therapists or social workers. And speaking of health equity, one factor that impacts the well-being of or outcome of a procedure for patients is basically socioeconomic factor, or how much support this person has. If we let him go home, who's going to take care of him? And that has a huge question that we are not answering today. Imagining LLMs going into those non-medical records, notes, and being able to suggest that, okay, this person requires additional care for us to be able to kind of support the well-being longer term. So again, huge impact there. 2 more use cases: conversational AI diagnostics. This is, compared to the first use case I talked about, this is about conversation between the physicians, healthcare provider, and chatbot. One pain point that's very highlighted is basically resource not being enough in healthcare. Time saving is huge benefit for physicians. So imagine basically a chatbot being able to assist doctors in diagnosis. I put the example here. I know that it's not easy to read. It's not important. Basically, it's a conversation between chatbot in a very technical language with the doctor about basically certain reports or images. And the last one that I want to talk about is the drug discovery. Just giving you some idea of how time-consuming and or resource-consuming developing one drug is. Imagine it takes a decade, years for sure, to develop a new drug, and it ranges the cost between 340 million to 2.8 billion just for one drug. So time-consuming, resource-consuming. I'm not suggesting that LLMs are going to come and cut the cost by significant. No, we have, regulations in place. We have Food and Drug Administration for some good reason. We have a process implemented that I'm not expecting to change anytime soon. But imagine just on initial steps of how it's worked today is kind of like trial and error of putting 3D structures. What if LLMs go in, evaluate the likelihood of various amino acids interacting effectively with the drug molecule using vast amount of training data in molecular biology and pharmacology, and at least in the beginning, suggesting some hints to scientists to at least move faster. And speaking of those use cases and bringing to practice, it's always interesting to me whenever I want to get a hint on what's happening in a certain industry. I go and look at the startups, recent startups, what's funded. Basically, wherever money goes, usually innovation follows. So these are the basically map of 90 plus healthcare AI startups to watch in a different category of imaging diagnostics, drug discovery, genomics, fitness, virtual assistant, hospital decision supports, and the rest. Majority number-wise is in the category of imaging and diagnostics, 29%, raise a combined 1.5 billion, average of 50 million each. Just keep in mind something is coming in the next slides that I want you to remember this number, $50 million through multiple rounds of funding. So keep that in mind. I will tell you why. 60% of these companies are based in the United States, and China and UK are following. And the reason I put this data is here because I feel a lot of, especially in healthcare, highly regulated policy making is going to be super important when it comes to how fast innovation moves. We see China catching up because of its government AI-focused development strategy. We see UK-based startup accelerating in at least number of healthcare startups. One reason I see that's super important, again, data is gold. British citizens share their anonymous healthcare data with the British National Health Services. So imagine that those startups can take those anonymous data and apply it in different applications, super useful. So I told you to remember that 50 million number. One specific one that was super exciting, super interesting for me to go and read a little bit more about it. Hippocratic AI raised 50 million in seed funding only. It's a huge number. And when you look at their Crunchbase page, by the way, Crunchbase is a great resource if you want to go and just explore what new startups are coming to existence. So just looking at it, they are not even promising something huge. They are saying the focus is on non-diagnostics. Imagine, do you remember like Watson Health, IBM? They were forced to sell at loss because of technical difficulty. And now we are seeing a small 1 to 10 person startup raising 50 million in seed funding only. And it's not even groundbreaking, right? I mentioned, at least at the time that I was pitching for my own startup, at least one or two out of three was around this concept. So what's really happening? This startup is basically focusing on use cases going to be explaining benefits, billing reminder, pre-op questions, and this is an interesting part, delivering negative test results only, meaning nothing is wrong. So it comes basically the question of whether it's a matter of how model is empathetic or not, or it's a matter of liability, or just not pissing off the customer. So we don't know those details yet, but it's interesting how they are marketing their offering. The good thing that makes me excited is, unlike human beings, models can speak every language, and imagine that how much value it can have for developing countries. The question for me, to me at least, it was underwhelming. And the question arises that, are we there yet? And looking at this benchmark table they shared, basically they compared their model with 3 other LLMs, and the improvement ranges from 2% to somewhere around 14% in different basically accuracy area. But just looking at the absolute numbers, for example, 76.5% in kind of pharmacy accuracy and decision in that area, to me, at least, it was underwhelming. So it's exciting to see, maybe to entrepreneurs or future entrepreneurs out there, I think this is just signaling that the bar is not that high for us to step in. Again, it's just an opinion. So speaking of diagnosis, I think it's very important to also look into where big tech going. A specific one that I found super exciting is Google DeepMind development of AMI, Articulate Medical Intelligence Explorer, basically trained on the transcripts of 100,000 physician-patient dialogues, 65 clinician-written summary of ICU notes, thousands of questions from United States medical license examination. What they did, they compared the performance on 6 fronts of diagnostic accuracy, patient confidence in care, perceived openness and honesty, empathy, escalation recommendation, and management plan. And they are they compared AMI with PCP, which is primary care physician. And on all fronts, basically, AMI is beating human. Again, it's from their website. I feel that independent studies are definitely needed in here to kind of validate some of the findings. But I dropped the example of conversation in here. Basically, patient is saying, I have a chest pain and accompanied by discomfort in upper stomach. The AI responds with, I'm sorry to hear you're experiencing that, asking for more details and back and forth. You see some, basically, it was really interesting for me to start with, acknowledging patient and then asking for clarifying question and being really detailed in what is needed to understand. So this is something to watch out for, and at least made me really, really excited. So we can't just talk about all the excitement without talking about challenges. A lot of challenges that you see me talking is shared among different industries. For some of you out there, regardless of what industry you're in, most of these, all of them apply to different fields as well. But again, stake is higher when it comes to healthcare. We're dealing with the health well-being of the individuals. So it's extra important to look into these limitations, challenges, and being able to find a way to mitigate. So the first one, bias and fairness. Again, for me to kind of deliver the message of why this is super important, I cited the paper here. A 2019 study found that an algorithm already implemented in hospitals that decided which patient needed care falsely concluded Black patients are healthier than equally sick white patients. So what happened there? So when they were developing model, the output they focused on, basically they measured the sickness by how much basically insurance claim was submitted. So higher insurance claim, patient being sicker. However, we know that in socioeconomic, not underserved communities, they don't have insurance or have access to healthcare providers. So of course, their insurance bill is going to be 0 to none. So tying assessing health based on insurance claim was basically leading why this already implemented model was hurtful. And research showed that they switched replacing their insurance claim data with patients' biological data, and that reduced the bias by 84%. So again, garbage in, garbage out. Value in, value out. It's super important what data we are using. And we need to push for explainability. In the next slide, I'm quickly gonna touch on what explainability means and challenges, but not going deep into that. I cited a paper for that, for those of you interested. The other one is basically making sure we're testing, validating, monitoring models for any potential bias. For example, one thing we can use is counterfactual fairness. The idea is that, okay, if you replace and change the gender of this person to a different gender, are you getting the same results? Super kind of intuitive. So that's one example of how models can be evaluated. The next one is cost. We know LLMs, huge models, require significant cost and resource. And imagine this is, of course, easier for big tech, but for low resource communities, this is a huge, basically, burden. One way is leveraging cloud computing. Cloud computing have been around for ages. Basically, it eliminates upfront investment in computing by paying only for the portion that you use as you go. The other ones is basically leveraging more efficient models, leveraging foundational models. We talked about them, basically using already not starting from scratch, but already trained models and basically building on top of that. Domain adaptation and basically transfer learning is one way to look into. There are a lot of research out there touching base on this. I basically cited one from Science in here. And cost sharing through collaboration, I think compared to other industries, healthcare is doing fairly good in collaborations, basically a lot of collaborations. Basically everybody is so used to collaborations, at least in my view in healthcare. So cost sharing through collaboration is one way to mitigate the cost of these models. I talked about explainability, quickly touching on this one. Another paper cited in here, which was very useful. Explainability refers to the ability to explain or present the behavioral models in human understandable terms. So when it comes to patients, in order to build trust with patients, when we'll be basically suggesting, okay, here's the course of action or treatment we are taking, it's very important to explain how we got there. So that's super simple. That's what we mean by explainability. So when it comes to LLMs, compares to traditional deep learning models, the scale of LLMs in terms of parameters we looked at and training data makes understanding and interpreting decision-making process more difficult and more compute intensive. Continuing on challenges, we already are I almost forgot the term hallucination until basically ChatGPT and LLMs came into picture. So we are all familiar with hallucination, really sometimes really hard to recognize how accurate the output is. And imagine it is, again, a stake way higher in healthcare. And in addition to that, the complexity of medical language and context can make it even more difficult for LLMs to capture the nuances. So big challenge when it comes to healthcare. Some ways to mitigate it, basically leveraging reinforcement learning, keeping the expert in the loop. One interesting multidisciplinary collaboration I saw, and I basically dropped, you will see on the right side of the presentation, address to GitHub. It's a framework for now. It's focusing on basically multidisciplinary collaboration. So how it works is that, okay, the subject is about cancer. We are gathering basically experts in that field, and they analyze and they write a report. LLM summarizes report, gathers all the experts. It's continuous iterate on the report until until consensus is reached. Basically, that's the idea. The other avenue we should take is dynamic training. Of course, in healthcare, especially, findings are moving fast in sense of findings, new data emerging from clinical data. So continuous updating and training of the model is the key. And the one obvious one is data privacy. Protecting basically sensitive personal data is important. Just last year around, I believe, June, OpenAI announced the leak of the information, which was also including some financial information. So those becomes super more important when it comes to sensitive data and health data for patients. So it's important to maybe we can implement some APIs to independent, more secure applications. Those are the things to keep in mind. So last but not least, before we go to questions, it was important for me to ask Dolly what Dolly thinks about LLMs in healthcare. You see, this is the image generated. What was interesting to me is presence of maybe too many people, and maybe this is signaling to us that the models are not replacing humans, but it's too soon to tell. So we will see in future. This concludes the presentation. Would love to open it to everyone. Would love to make it a discussion, not a one way. So any question, if anyone have answer, feel free to also raise hand and make this one a conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mariam. This was a great presentation. Really enjoyed it. I'm going to start letting questions come in. So just like one quick note that I was going to say is, for those of you that are still interested in enrolling into our upcoming cohort that basically starts next week, the link to the cohort is here. We're extending the deadline of the application to the end of the weekend, so you can still have some time to apply, and we'll be kind of letting people in as soon as we can, just so that you have a chance to get into the program. And Priyanka, welcome to the cohort. We got a lot of people. We have 2 different sessions, both Saturday morning and Tuesday evening. So very exciting stuff. And people are receiving their communications for the course shortly. So the first question is coming in from Pooja that says, why do you think the startups in healthcare are are funded despite all the regulatory hurdles?
Got it. So definitely, so regulations are not new in healthcare. They have been around, and regardless of that, we have seen greater startups being successful, IPO exiting. So it's definitely a consideration for individuals going in, but there are many ways to basically mitigate the risk when it comes to healthcare startups. One thing that I think can be super helpful is engaging with experts from the get-go. Frugal, building a group of advisors from very beginning. The course of if you're thinking about starting your own startup, it's super important to have them and basically have their advice from day one. Also, I think spending on engaging with law experts in the field or regulatory experts in the field is an investment. And those are the things that there are some nuances. For example, this startup that I talked about, focusing on non-diagnosis, is signaling that they are basically trying to ease some of the regulations on that front. So many different levers that individuals can pull to basically do risk being a healthcare startup out there.
Thanks so much for that answer. We got one more question from Jutsna. Jutsna is actually one of our cohort alumni as well. So it's great to see that a lot of the cohort alumni are also attending the community session. So she asked, can you comment on the trials and testing the AI healthcare products before production grade release? So basically, I guess you're trying to get a sense of like what sort of trials and testing these AI healthcare products are doing before they actually release their products into production. That's a great question.
So the question is basically what are the steps before they go to?
Yeah, like how do you do trials? Like how do you do testing, given that these are like kind of AI based, and I guess they're like kind of less reliant on human trials in a traditional way? Have you noticed any trends, or is it too early to judge?
I haven't seen any trend on that front, but I want to touch base on basically collaboration aspect of a lot of basic proving concept and kind of proving that an idea in healthcare AI space is working requires actually doing some data collection involving experts. For example, we saw that one research of comparing chatbot with a human performance. Those are the things that will be done through the collaboration and that data collection. I haven't seen any change in trend in how research is being done just solely on focusing on an AI aspect of it.
Got it. Thanks so much for that. So I'm going to switch to LinkedIn for a second. So there's a question coming from LinkedIn asking, as a medical device startup in AI, how can I explore the pathways that are available for regulatory approvals? And I guess this is a start. This is a question that I can imagine a lot of people that are thinking about like doing an AI project in healthcare are kind of like thinking about like, how do I deal with like all the regulatory challenges? And I think you touched on it briefly by mentioning it's a good idea to have experts in the team, like people that are already familiar with that, but maybe you can expand on that a little bit. That would be great.
Yeah, perfect. I definitely think that's an investment. I know that at least in the beginning of, startup life cycle, we don't have money to spend. We are basically ultra frugal, but I believe that it is an investment, especially since a lot of regulations, because this AI LLMs kind of like dropped and I'm expecting a lot of changes soon happening on regulations front. So I wouldn't even make a comment on that, but I urge everyone to engage with experts in a regulatory space from the day one of even thinking about your startup.
Got it. Thanks so much. So a couple more questions. So Chaitali is also attending our next cohort. So first of all, welcome to the cohort. And second of all, thank you for your questions. The question is, what kind of metrics are generally tracked for LLMs in healthcare? It's a good question.
So I think it really depends on the design of the study and the outcome. But I would say, for example, to the ones that we looked at, accuracy is one, and basically it really depends on what they are measuring. But what I suggest is basically a lot of those papers that I cited have details of, okay, here was the study design, here is the approach taken, and here's basically what was the success metric. Each of these basically algorithms or human were kind of compared against. And I would say that would be the best next step for individuals to dive deeper into those studies.
Got it. I'll actually ask one follow-up question on that. On the accuracy side, especially in the world of healthcare, what's the best way to actually track and measure accuracy? Like what sort of metrics, like how would you actually go about measuring whether or not you have high versus, low accuracy?
Got it. So I think it's very similar to kind of evaluation of ML models in general. But one example, imagine that the model is about, predicting if the tumor exists or not, like binary 0, 1. So basically, one way is we have labeled data and we measure the accuracy based on, okay, how the model is performing in basically predicting 0, 1, whether tumor exists or not.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Thanks so much. So next question is from Srinivasa. He's asking, data privacy is a big deal in healthcare. So what kind of data are being used for basically training or like test data? Good question.
For example, for MRI images, all redacted. So no information, no personally identifiable information is fed into models. For some of these chatbots, those are even not even identifiable information from the get-go. I was reading an article, and one of the things kind of preparing data in a preparation data, they found a way to automatically redact or remove personally identifiable information from the records. That was also really interesting for me. They basically removed patient information from 70,000 reports automatically. They didn't go into detail of how they did it, but that's basically one way of preparing and kind of reducing the risk when it comes to privacy of data.
Got it. Thanks for that. So we got more questions coming in. So this question is from Alice on LinkedIn. Really good question. And I have part of the answer I'll provide after yours. But so the question is, hi, Marianne. I'm a PM in EdTech startups. I'm currently upskilling my ML/AI skills and want to enter the medical domain. I've been known to have strong soft skills and technical knowledge. But I don't have programming or AI ML background. So what's the best way to pivot? And she says that her concern is not so much about the domain pivot part. She thinks that she can kind of learn that part, but like, how does she go for product roles in AI without formal education in data or ML or AI?
Vision, do you want to take that one? I feel that you're
sure, of course.
in that area.
Have you heard of this cohort at PM Exercises called AI Product Management Cohort? We've honestly designed that exactly for the audience that's asking this question. Like, you get to get your hands dirty, even though you might not have a lot of technical background. And the program is meant to really give you that foundational knowledge. You also get to build a product during the cohort. So, and we'll provide you with the guidance that you need for that. So we think that hopefully that would be a good solution. But my general opinion, to be honest, in anything that you want to do is be that individual before you get hired for that role. So if you're trying to do the other way, you're trying to become a PM in EdTech, go build a product in EdTech and release it so that you can actually learn through the whole experience and you can demo it and present it. And sometimes you can do it through a cohort, sometimes you can do it yourself, but that's the best way to learn. I'll pass it back to you.
I would like to plus one on that one, and talking specifically about my own journey. Again, I was coming from a background that is not so common for product managers. Basically, I was a biomedical researchers. researcher. What really helped me, to your point, Bijan, is about, getting hands-on and being that person before actually getting the job. For me, it was all about, okay, this is the theory. How can I come up with a way that I actually implement it? So hands-on learning is super important, and being able to actually develop something, become a builder before becoming a product manager is really key. So it's good to hear, Bijan, that the cohort individuals are going through basically project-based learning. Good to hear.
Thank you. So a lot of questions still coming in. So this is an interesting one. And this is something that I've also seen, to be honest, even myself as a user, especially given the hallucinations that we're seeing, like sometimes wondering, like, can I rely on the answer that is provided to me? So the question is, what are some of the steps that a PM can potentially take to have end users trust using the AI healthcare products? Like basically the question is more like from an adoption perspective, what can you do to help businesses drive adoption of the users and kind of trust that their AI responses are reliable?
All right, that's a really good one. I think it applies to every industry and every basically product management a work stream or project, but especially important in healthcare. I think being able to generate rich data. So again, collaborating with scientists to come up with some research design, really evaluating the model and taking those data and translating it in a super easy way for individuals to understand is one way to really say that, okay, it's not that just us telling you this is a good thing you should start using, but this is the data, and here is we are proving it with data rather than us telling you what to do. So I think that is the key. Again, collecting enough data, building confidence, using backed with data, and being able to translate those information in an easy to understand and applicable way for customers to start trusting you with the product, especially in this high risk area.
Got it. Thanks so much for that answer. I think we're finally caught up on all the questions. Let me see if there's anything else that's coming in. LinkedIn sometimes has a little bit of a delay. Let me just take one final look. Yeah, we're good. So I wanted to, thank you one more time. Thank you so much for being here and really appreciate it. Just wanted to kind of take 1 or 2 minutes to invite if any of the previous cohort participants are interested in sharing their experiences with the cohort. I would really appreciate it. I can see there are a few people here, maybe either Juan, if you're interested, or Jyotsna, or Sri, I can see you. Mohsen, you're also here as well. Anybody who's interested, please just go ahead, share your thoughts. I'm kind of putting you guys on the spot. If you don't feel comfortable, it's okay too. But if you are, go ahead and share your thoughts. Okay, I can see Joanne is on. Perfect, thank you.
I'm happy to share some thoughts. So my background was more on the design side, the UX and digital design, building products. So I'm not an engineer, and I came into the course, a little apprehensive about how technical it would be. But I will say that it was a great experience. We started from the ground up, and Bijan and Mahesh were very patient in answering any questions we had, and the project-based learning was really great. And I feel like I now have a really solid foundation and working on my own side project as well. And a lot of what I learned is being applied. So I highly recommend it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was very nice of you. And I'm really glad that in our community now, a year into it, we have people coming from industry, sharing their unique perspectives. We welcome people from different backgrounds. engineering, non-engineering, design, medical, finance, highly technical consumer tech. So this is really a place where you can kind of just like come in every Saturday and learn. So I want to just like kind of leave it at that. And thank you so much, Mariam, again for coming in, and Juan, thank you so much for the shout out. Really appreciate it. We hope to have you, Mariam, here again at some point, and we'll stay in touch. But with that said, I think we can wrap it up. Is there anything you wanted to kind of share at the end, Mariam?
No, thanks for having me. I enjoyed this session, and best of luck, everybody, in your journeys.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Question.
Go ahead. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, for startups, right? How did they get access to patient data and medical data, right? Because that's the key to developing whatever you want.
Exactly, and that's why I called out UK as startups having basically upper hand, because of access to patient information available publicly as a kind of public data set. If we don't have that, again, collaboration with medical institutions, university is a path that a lot of startups are taking.
I have a question actually. It's a very interesting discussion so far. Are they also using synthetic data for this kind of cases?
Yeah.
Any fields and like how they're generating? Because we have been working some time back with X-rays, so it becomes very difficult to get those volume.
Yep, exactly. And I didn't touch on it in my presentation, but generative AI, one of the very important benefits individuals are realizing in healthcare is actually in generating synthetic data. To your point, one of the pain points in data in healthcare is lack of data and access to data. So definitely generative AI is being leveraged for generating synthetic data. And we're seeing more and more the trend toward basically more research being done on data space too.
Sure, thanks.
Awesome. I got one more question from somebody posting. So maybe given we still have 6-7 more minutes, I'll keep going. Is that okay?
Yeah,
So
sure.
The question is, what are the major challenges that you faced as an AI startup in healthcare?
Oh gosh, that's a really good one. So we're talking about, 2015. AI wasn't this kind of mainstream at the time. Of course, they were around for ages, but it wasn't like today that everybody was talking about it. So one of the major challenges that I felt, at least at the time, is basically whether the industry is prepared to embrace that technology, and kind of openness to that technology was something that, okay, do you need to take extra step to educate your customers whether they need it in the first place, or they realize the need and you don't need to spend time, convincing them that they need it. So we are starting basically on a higher ground. So today I think it might be easier because a lot of basically depending on what your startup is, but individuals, institutions are realizing importance of AI. At the time, the biggest challenge I had was basically convincing at the time our main customer segment was pharmaceutical companies focusing on clinical trial data management. Is basically the biggest challenge was convincing them that they need it in the first place. So I would say that was the biggest challenge.
And doing a startup is also a challenge on itself in so many different areas. So kudos to you for focusing on that. And I think the other experience that I've had in a startup is like, you learn so much that it's almost like an intense exercise. Like after that, everything else seems pretty easy. So highly recommend it to anybody who's like thinking about breaking in to join a startup or do their own startup. It might seem like a high failure rate, but it's really, I think you should say it's high learning rate. Like you have
Exactly.
very, very good learnings during those few years. So it's almost like yeah, go ahead.
It's interesting what you mentioned on the learning aspect. It's so spot on, because I started my recommendation saying, engage with those experts from day one, because that was exactly one of the learnings I learned back. That it's super important to not be frugal when it comes to basically knowledge, expertise. So it's interesting you touched on that point. Definitely intense way of learning and growing for sure. I also highly recommend entrepreneurship.
Thank you for that. Okay, great. I think we're pretty much right on time, couple minutes early. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. I think we're gonna start wrapping the call, and a lot of people are thanking you, Mariam, as well. On LinkedIn also, a lot of people are sending very positive messages. So thank you so much again for coming. And for those of you that are interested, next week we're going to be here again with one of the alumni of our AI product manager cohort, Mahesh, not the Mahesh that you guys all know, the other Mahesh, who is a part of our cohort 4 or 3, I believe. He's going to be going over one of the projects that he's been working on, so that's very interesting. I think we're going to share more information on it on LinkedIn. The event is coming up on LinkedIn over the next day or two. Make sure that you attend the next one. I think it's going to be very valuable for everybody. So thanks so much again, and have a good weekend. Bye.